All right, let's dive into the history of a nation that has truly mastered the art of survival. We're going to journey through this land of ancient kings and soaring mountains, a place that was forged in conflict, unified by a single visionary, and completely reborn as a modern republic. This is the incredible story of Nepal.
So let's start with the big question, the one that hangs over everything. How does a nation, literally squeeze between two of the world's biggest giants, India and China, manage to carve out and defend its own unique identity for thousands of years? That's the real puzzle at the heart of Nepal's story. And the answer is just an amazing lesson in resilience.
Okay, so to really get the Nepal of today, we have to go back, way, way back. We're talking about the very foundations, the ancient dynasties that laid the first stones of this incredible nation.
The history of the Kathmandu Valley goes incredibly deep, stretching back thousands of years. But if there's one era that really defined Nepal's cultural DNA, it's the Licchavi period. Starting in the 4th century, this wasn't just another dynasty, it was a true golden age. Just picture this flourishing of breathtaking art and architecture, a creative explosion that would set the standard for the next 1,000 years.
Then came the Malla dynasty. For 6 whole centuries, they brought in an era of unbelievable prosperity. They were fantastic traders, and all that wealth fueled this massive boom in noir art and architecture. You know those stunningly intricate Durbar squares in Kathmandu, Patan, and Bhaktapur? Yep, that's the Malla's legacy. But here's the tragic irony. The very same kingdoms that created all this beauty were also locked in constant, bitter rivalries. And that infighting, well, it would eventually be their undoing, leaving the door wide open for an outsider to come in.
And that weakness, that vulnerability, created the perfect opening for a monumental shift. This is the moment where all those little fragmented kingdoms start getting forged into the single nation that we now know as Nepal.
And here he is, Prithvi Narayan Shah. In the mid-18th century, this super ambitious king from the small kingdom of Gorkha looked down at the squabbling city-states in the valley, and he didn't see chaos, he saw an opportunity. He had a vision for something much, much bigger, a single, unified Nepal.
And his entire strategy, his whole philosophy, can be boiled down to this one absolutely brilliant metaphor. He famously said, Nepal is a yam between two boulders, a fragile nation squeezed between the immense power of China to the north and India to the south. And this wasn't just some clever phrase. It became the fundamental principle of Nepal's foreign policy, a delicate balancing act that is still very much alive today.
But, forging a nation is one thing. Holding it together is a whole other challenge. And the newly unified Nepal was about to face its first huge test, a conflict that would define its borders and actually force it to turn inward for more than 100 years.
That test came in the form of the Anglo-Nepal War. Now, the Nepalis fought fiercely against the powerful British East India Company, but in the end, they lost a lot of territory. The price was steep. But here's the crucial part. What they didn't lose was their independence. At a time when the British Empire was swallowing up the entire subcontinent, Nepal was never colonized. It stayed independent, a remarkable achievement that also introduced the world to the legendary Gurkha soldiers, whose bravery earned them the deep respect of their enemies.
104 years. Just think about that for a second. Over a century. That's exactly how long the next, very strange chapter in Nepal's history lasted. And that chapter was the Rana regime. You can pretty much forget everything you know about a typical monarchy. After a blooded coup, one single family, the Ranas, seized absolute power. For 104 years, they ruled as hereditary prime ministers, passing power from brother to brother. The king, he was just a figurehead with no real power at all. And the country itself was intentionally sealed off from the rest of the world, like a kingdom frozen in time. But you can't keep a nation isolated forever, right? The 20th century came along and shattered Nepal's seclusion with decades of upheaval. What came next was a 50-year battle, a constant tug of war between absolute power and this unstoppable demand for democracy.
And this road to democracy was, well, it was incredibly rocky. Just look at this cycle. In 1951, a popular revolution finally gets rid of the Ranas. Awesome, but freedom is fragile. Just 9 years later, the king takes back control, imposing his own autocratic system. It takes another 3 decades and a massive people's movement in 1990 to finally win back democracy. But even then, the instability just continued, leading directly to a devastating 10-year civil war that would tear the country apart.
That decade of brutal conflict became the fire, the crucible, for Nepal's final, dramatic rebirth. Out of the ashes of a civil war, the nation was about to transform itself from an ancient kingdom into a modern republic. And it was all going to happen unbelievably fast.
So the 21st century kicks off with an almost unbelievable tragedy, the royal massacre in 2001. The killing of the royal family just sent shockwaves through the nation and completely shattered the monarchy's almost divine image. This was the point of no return. By 2006, another huge people's movement stripped the new king of all his power. The momentum was just unstoppable. And only 2 years after that, it was done. The 240-year-old Shah monarchy was officially abolished.
And that brings us to today. With a brand new constitution in 2015, the nation that started as a bunch of warring kingdoms and survived centuries of autocratic rule is now a secular, federal, democratic republic. It's really the culmination of that long, chaotic, and truly incredible journey.
So, one massive chapter of Nepal's history has closed, but a new one is just getting started. As a young republic, it faces the same challenge it always has, the one Prithvi Narayan Shah identified centuries ago. And so the question for the future is the same as it was in the past. How will Nepal navigate its path as the yam between two incredibly powerful 21st century boulders?